Bum, ba, da, bum. Welcome to episode 43 of the Strength in Words podcast. Today I'm speaking with Andrea Boerigter of The Speech Mom. She is a pediatric speech and language pathologist specializing in the areas of feeding and language development. She's the owner of Bloombox, which she'll tell us more about in a few minutes, and she's a mother of 2 young boys. I can relate. Andee, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
So nice to have you. So I asked you to come onto the show today to speak a bit about your own experience as both a professional working with young children as well as a mother of young children, which of course is, again, something I can relate to as well. So first, let's just hear a little bit about you, what brought you to the kind of work you're doing today.
So, like you said, I'm a pediatric speech and language pathologist. And I've always been really passionate about involving families and working with families. But as I moved to South Dakota and took some birth to 3 patients, which I really enjoy because it's more of a family training type model. So I learned more by doing it. And sorry, I lost a headphone there. And as I invested in learning more, I realized how much more progress these kids were making because we were involving the families. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the same thing as I became more involved with feeding therapy. The more I can train the families, the more progress these kids are making. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I ended up being so passionate about training families.
Right. And I mean, again, it's we're there as the professional for this very distinct short amount of time. So the more training, the more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we as much as we'd love to say we can make a huge difference in 1 hour a week, we really can't. I mean, we can train some new skills for a kid, but when we want to see carryover, we want to see real hardcore progress, we have to look at how we can train someone that's with them all the time to do what we do.
Exactly. So I'm so curious how your conception of your professional identity changed when you had kids of your own.
It changed everything. I actually remember my very first session. I came back after my maternity leave. I walked in thinking everything would be the same. And I left thinking I'll never do a session the same again. The boys, Hank and Gus, they inspire everything I do as a therapist. I mean, they didn't educate me. They don't make it easier for me to do my job, but there's nothing they do that makes my life easy for them, or you know what I mean. They just, yes, absolutely. But they taught me to stop treating families like they are just there and making them the most important aspect of therapy. And Hank actually had feeding issues. He was born a few weeks early. And I was getting so irritated going into these lactation consultants, meeting with his pediatrician, the way they were talking to me. They were telling me what he was doing and why he was doing it. And I would say, what should I be doing? And they were like, oh, well, we will do this and we will do that, but give me something to take home because he's my whole world, and I now realize that with the families I work with, I love these kids. I love every patient I have and they are so important to me and I'm so passionate about them doing well, but it's not even a small comparison of how much their parents want them to do well and how much their parents care. So if we can teach them what to do, everybody's winning.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And like you said, like we love these kids as professionals, but we know now that we have our own little person or people that that doesn't compare at all to how their parents feel.
Absolutely.
That's sort of what changed for me as well. So I get that.
Yeah. And, I also always say too that it made me so much more realistic because now if somebody tells me to do something with my kids and I'm like, how many times a day do you want me to do that? Like, are you insane? And so I used to tell families like, well, I think you should be doing this 5 to 6 times a day. And now I'm like, if you can get it done once, give yourself a high five because
you're amazing. Right.
Woo! Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's changed too.
Yeah. Well, that makes so much sense. What other sort of specific kinds of, what are some of the most important sort of tips or strategies that you use as a therapist that prove to be actually the most useful to you as a mother?
Absolutely.
Flip it around.
That is such a great question. And it is without a doubt patience. And I know that we are like, oh, patience. Yeah, everybody needs to have that. But especially when it comes to language development and feeding development, as a mom, I'm like, get it in your mouth. Let's do this. Like eat. But as a therapist, I know that I have to give them the food, let them experience the food, play with the food, talk to the food, lick the food. My husband just made like turkey quesadillas for lunch, and Gus was just like, no.
Ew.
And and my husband, he doesn't quite have that like feeding therapist vibe, so he's like, eat it, it's good. And so I was like, oh, well, what do you think? Mommy likes hers, and I mean, he was there for 10 minutes before he actually took the bite, but he did it. Whereas if I would have been like, I'm putting this in your mouth, he'd have probably lost his mind.
Right. Yeah.
And then the same thing goes for language development. When I, especially like imitation modeling, when I was working on just like that reciprocal imitation, as a therapist, if I watched a mom do that, I would be like, give them time. But as a mom, I just do it. I'm like, come on, say mama, mama, mama. And then I have to kind of remember what I tell parents not to do. And then.
Right. You have to put on your 2 hats. Right. Which hat am I wearing?
Absolutely. My kids know when I'm wearing my therapist hat. Like they see like rolling eyes, especially at meals. And I'm like, oh, well, if we don't know anything about this food, let's just touch it. And they're like, oh, geez, this lady again.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, so it sounds like that. And I think I get it because I do the same thing. Like having that sort of structure of this is the scaffolding, right? These are the steps. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think we have to bring to families as professionals is helping parents understand what the steps are to become successful so that a child can learn a certain skill. And some of that we just many families know innately, right? Many parents get that, like, obviously, for instance, a child is not born able to say a word, right? There are tiny little pieces that go into the development of speech and language so that a child can start to say his or her first word. Yes. And it's the same thing, like, as you're saying, with feeding and with all of those different pieces.
And I think it's important too to discuss that with parents, that there are necessary steps to get to the end goal. Yeah. I love, actually, ASHA has a printout of what they should be doing when they should be doing it. Because I think it's not only important for us to look at what they should be doing, but also to look at what they shouldn't be doing. They don't need to be putting these words together at 16 months. Let's back it up and look at what steps they need to be looking at. And ASHA is the American Speech and Hearing Association, and they have great parent resources at asha.org. Yes.
And we'll link to those on the podcast page and here in the community lab as well. That's great, Andee. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We are going to just take a little break to hear a word from our sponsors, and then we'll hear a little bit more about some of your favorite resources, Andee. Because I know you have some amazing ones that you've created as well. I can't wait to hear about those. Okay. Do you want to provide an enriching environment without all the plastic bells and whistles? Do you want to know how to stimulate your infant or toddler's growth and development? Are you tired of trying to do all of this in a vacuum? We weren't meant to parent in isolation. That's why I created the Strength in Words Community Lab, a content and community hub that brings you peace of mind. You have what matters when you need it most. Bite-sized morsels of developmental information, activity ideas to apply right now, parent support groups grouped by your child's age, developmental music classes, unprecedented access to professionals and special guests like the one we have today, and an active, engaged community of others like you. The Community Lab is an all-in-one resource that isn't one size fits all. To take your free 1-week trial and join us for everything I've just described, as well as member access to Q&A sessions with the featured guests I bring on the podcast, come check out community.strengthinwords.com. Okay, Andee, what made you decide to start the Speech Mom? And my second half of that twofold question, how did Bloomboxes come to be?
So the Speech Mom was a blog that I started because I recognized that as a parent, I was looking for resources, and there was really twofold resources. There was a group of resources that were being offered by people maybe without the education needed to offer those resources. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, there was a lot of resources offered by professionals that maybe didn't have that realistic aspect of having their own family.
Yep.
And neither of those resources were wrong. It's just not what I was looking for. I was looking for educated and realistic.
Yes.
And I said to my husband one day when he came home from work that I really wished someone was offering this education that also had the realistic experiences of being a mom. And he said, that sounds like something good for you to do. And
thanks, honey.
Yeah, great, because I don't have anything else to do. Yeah. So honestly, I wrote the first blog post and I had expectations of 7 people reading it. Like my mom, my mother-in-law, maybe a few friends. And it was so cool to see how many mothers, how many caregivers were really interested in their child's development, and they were really interested in how they could use the information in a realistic manner.
Yes.
Easy, simple tips. There is no expensive equipment required, and I'm never going to tell a parent to do something that I would not do, because that's horrible. And also, I'm never going to post something that doesn't solve a problem. And that is kind of a war between my husband and I, because he always reads them before I post them. And he's like, what is this? Are you solving a problem? And I'm like, no, but I just wanted to talk about it. And then he's like, get rid of it.
What a wonderful touchstone to have. That's great.
Yeah, he's great. Most of the time. But when I want to post something and he's like, no, then I'm kind of mad at him.
Right.
So yeah, that's how the Speech Mom started. And I was working for a different company. I really had no expectations of it being anything other than just a blog. Mm-hmm. And then people started calling that company and asking specifically for me. And I was kind of like, what am I doing here? Like, I should just be doing my own thing. So that's what I did. I quit my job. Everybody was kind of thinking I was losing my mind. And I just started doing private practice. And now I am full-time seeing patients.
It's great. How great.
And I think the reason that it is doing so well is because instead of treating the child, and I tell families this my very first visit, I do not treat your child. I will treat the whole family, because that's how we're going to, be successful.
Yep, exactly. So that's lovely. Well put. And you're preaching to the choir here. It's great.
Woo! But then there's the Bloombox, and the Bloombox is kind of its own beast. I started it because families were saying to me, what am I supposed to do until you get back? And even though I'm telling them, oh, get this toy out and do this and work with this and use these words and blah, 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 the moms would say, yeah, my kid's not going to do that for me with my toys. And I bring in really cool toys when I do therapy. And that's what the kids love. And that's what engages them. So I started putting together little kits for parents, and they would keep them for a couple weeks and return them. And then their friends were asking, where can we get these sets of toys with these therapy lesson plans? Because they're not just for kids that have speech and language delays. They are also for kids who are typically developing. My boys pick one every month. Right now they have, well, we've had camping for like a month and a half, but it's
a favorite.
They're obsessed with it. And I'm like, well, okay, just keep it.
So you organize them by theme, which I know because I received one to try, and it was so fun. We had an ice cream theme.
Yes, they are all themed. And, you know, everything is kind of just morphed into how it is today, because at first it wasn't. I was like throwing in some toys, writing some activities, leaving them with families. And then because I'm me, I'm like, oh, wouldn't this be so cool that it's themed and, you know, charming? And then I was adding a sensory bin, because who doesn't benefit from a sensory bin? And, you know, there it is. Now we're just.
I love it. I think what I enjoy about what you've done with Bloomboxes the most is that it's not just that it's like these fun toys. It's the little piece that you put in that shows and tells parents how to use them. That's the key. That's why I think it's the coolest, because it marries that professional and parent so beautifully, because you've got really fun toys. Really, you're just showing sort of an example with these specific fun toys. But it's the handouts that you bring with them that show parents, like, here's a way to think outside of this box that I've given you, actually.
here's a way to think outside of what's inside
here's
the box.
And here's the amazing stuff that's in it. But even if you don't have these kinds of things forever, you'll only have them for a temporary amount of time, which in and of itself is kind of awesome, because for a person who strives to be more minimalist than she is, like, what a great idea.
Yeah, well, it's also just to like have that rotation of toys.
Yes,
I mean,
toy rotation.
Geez, like just getting something new every 4 weeks. My kids are all about it. Whereas I wish that we could just throw away the toys we have and just. But I've tried.
Exactly. Exactly. But then the fact that you put in this like very specific, like, hey, here are some really easy ways that you can incorporate this kind of language. And it's specific enough but also broad enough to help people start to just like get them thinking about how we can use play to open up and really support communication development, which is
and the goal of all of those activities is that it can be child-led, and it can still have that language enrichment, the cognitive enrichment, the fine motor, the sensory, because we don't have to tell a child how to play. They innately know how to play, but how can we use the natural play that they are going to do on their own to help them develop new skills? So, it is such a fun challenge to write those activities, to see, see how we can use these toys to elicit new development skills. And the Bloomboxes are for ages 2 through 6. So there's 2 levels of each activity. So there's the new talker, which we see like the 2 and 3-year-olds really benefit from. And then the 4 through 6 is the next stepper. And so you know how they work, everybody out there knows how they work, is that you rent them. So you get a subscription, you get one every month, and at the end of the month, you box it back up. There's a shipping label in there, you slap it on, and it comes right back to me. And in the meantime, you get a new one. And the research shows that after about 4 weeks, your kids don't get any type of developmental stimulation from toys. If they played with them for 4 weeks, really, we can get rid of them. I know, isn't that sad? I wish I could just get rid of everything after 4 weeks, but and also they're all sanitized with natural cleaning ingredients, and they're all, you know, re-prepped for the families.
Very
and
cool.
Also, this is so cool. A company that makes child-friendly baking ingredients has reached out to me, and now you get a baking mix in a few of the boxes, in the cupcake box, in the Italian box, in the birthday box. You get a mix that is egg-free. So if kids want to have that sensory involvement, use their fingers. If they lick their fingers, we're not worried about, you know, the salmonella aspect of it.
Very nice.
It's really
amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
That's great. What fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Andee, can you share a few more of just some of your favorite resources for language development, communication, play, those kinds of things?
Well, Strength in Words is a great resource.
Thank you. It's not, you know, it's so nice. I think when both of us started, there were very few of us. And now I'm so glad that there are a few people like us who can create this really useful content for people and you know, disseminate the information. It's so fun.
Absolutely.
And in different voices, right? So
well, and I think it's really cool that you and I have done more of our work towards people, not speech pathologists.
Yeah.
Not that speech pathologists aren't great people, the rest of the people. Because I think that I love borrowing resources from so many other blogs, from so many other websites. Yeah. But we have the education to use those resources that were designed for speech pathologists. So I think it's really cool that there is all of a sudden this movement of providing resources and education for families instead of colleagues, which,
yeah.
And I need that colleague resource. So don't stop doing what you're doing, people like the speech bubble. But I think it's great that we're reaching out a little bit further.
Agreed.
So, but yeah, my favorite resources, you know, I'm just always like going with it. What I find one day, I might like different the next day. For feeding, there are some like products that I love. Like I love Easy Peasy. Are you guys familiar with Easy Peasy? There are these mats that's like, they are not sticky. They are suction cupped. Maybe I have one. Oh, I do. I've got one right here. I'm going to show it to you.
Yeah, they're great little like placemat things. Yes.
Yeah.
With the plate built in. Amazing.
Yeah, so it's like it sticks to your table. This one's kind of dusty. And the kids can't throw them, which I think is just so cool. You know, other resources that I like, feeding wise, I love the Lala cups. If you guys are looking for sippy cups, they're straw cups that have weighted straws. So when you tip them, the straw drops to where the liquid is. And
How do you spell that?
LOLLA cup. It's a smaller company, but they were on Shark Tank. That's how I learned about them.
They're on Shark Tank. That's
they
amazing.
were on Shark Tank. I know.
We have a question from the audience, which is, when should you start with those cups?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like bottles to be gone by 12 months. So if it's a kiddo that is, you know, bottle fed, I just like to have that gone by 12 months. And I like to just incorporate the cups naturally starting around 9 months. So I'm not giving it to them in place of a bottle. I'm just giving it to them because I want you to start getting used to this. So even though they might still be breastfed or bottle fed, just start showing them those cups, setting them in front of them, let them knock them on the floor. I don't care. Make it just a natural part of their day.
It's a play object.
Yes. Yeah. It's something that we want them to be comfortable with.
Yeah. There's no, it's a low pressure situation, then it's a playful object. Yeah.
Easy stuff. And then as far as how old they should be when they suck out of straws, I I'm pretty relaxed on this because I don't feel like sucking on a straw is like they must have this skill kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know around between 18 and 24 months, I love to see that that's a successful skill they can do all the time. Before
Mm-hmm.
that, if you have a really big concern, I get the honey bears.
Mm-hmm.
And the honey bears they're therapy cups, but anybody can use them. It looks like one of those little honey bears, that we get our honey out of, but it's a straw and it's airtight. So if you squeeze that bear a little bit, the liquid shoots up through the straw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great way just to trigger a child's understanding of, oh, liquid's going to come out of this straw. And a lot of times that's all it takes is that little squeeze shoots into their mouth, and then
that's it.
The reflex is that they suck out of it, which is cool.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, Andrea, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. And thanks to all our community lab members who are listening live. And we're going to continue this discussion, open up for a Q&A session for you guys in just a minute. But for everyone listening from home or on the go, thanks so much for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Bye.